Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We've all heard countless stories about murder cases, where the perpetrator is immediately labeled a monster, a soulless killer. But today, I want to tell you a very different kind of story. One where, after hearing the details, you might not know who to blame, and you might struggle to decide who's truly at fault. Imagine this. A 14-year-old boy, quietly living in a small house with his single mother. No criminal record. No signs of rebellion. Just an ordinary kid. Then one night, he picks up a kitchen knife and kills his own mother. Not for money. Not out of hate. Not because of drugs or gangs. So why did he do it? A moment of blind rage? Or the tragic result of years spent drowning in fear, abuse, and emotional isolation? Will you still believe that blood is thicker than water after you learn the truth behind this case? And Alexander Bedford, the 14-year-old who stabbed his mother, was he a cold-blooded killer? Or just a child who no one ever listened to, until it was far too late? Part 1, Behind Closed Doors. From the outside, Alexander Bedford looked like just another quiet teenager trying to get through middle school. He lived in Miami, Florida, in a modest home with his single mother. There was no father in the picture, no siblings to confide in. To most people, Alexander was just a shy kid, soft-spoken, polite, and reserved. But that silence hid something far more disturbing. Behind closed doors, life in the Bedford household was anything but normal. According to multiple accounts from neighbors, family friends, and later, court documents, Alexander's mother was not merely strict, she was abusive. Teachers occasionally saw bruises on his arms. A few classmates noticed that he flinched whenever someone raised their voice near him. And yet, no one said anything. Maybe it didn't seem serious enough at the time. Maybe they thought it wasn't their place to interfere. After all, don't all teenagers have tough moments with their parents? But Alexander's situation wasn't just tough. Reports surfaced that his mother regularly beat him with extension cords. Not as a one-time punishment, but routinely, for things like bad grades, forgotten chores, or even minor missteps. The abuse wasn't only physical, either. In one of the most disturbing revelations, it was claimed that she forced Alexander to wear women's clothing around the house. Some said it was her way of punishing him. Others believed she did it to humiliate and break his spirit. In her eyes, he was too masculine, too defiant. And she was determined to correct that. Even more unsettling, at least one adult in the boy's life suspected something was wrong. A teacher reportedly noticed the bruises and asked Alexander about them. But without hard evidence, and perhaps afraid of overstepping, the concern faded into silence. Like so many other warning signs in abusive households, it slipped through the cracks. And so, Alexander kept going. Day after day, living in a home that was supposed to protect him but instead broke him piece by piece. His behavior began to shift. He withdrew from friends. He started writing strange, morbid notes in class, one of which would later become chilling evidence in court. A crumpled piece of notebook paper that read, "How do you kill someone?" At the time, his teacher thought it was just a teenage joke. But looking back, it was a cry for help. Part 2, The Breaking Point, How It Happened. That night, the sky over Miami was starless, silent. Inside a modest house tucked on a quiet street, everything looked calm. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Alexander walked through the front door with his shoulders slumped. In his hand, he held a report card, one marked with grades that no student ever wants to bring home. For most kids, it would have been disappointing. For Alexander, it was a trigger. His mother sat in the living room, bathed in the dim glow of a single lamp. She grabbed the paper from him, glanced at it for 2 seconds, then slapped it onto the floor. "What is this? Another F? I told you, if you don't shape up, you're no son of mine." Alexander said nothing. His fists clenched slightly. This was nothing new. He was used to the yelling, the disappointment. But tonight, something felt different. He wasn't just afraid, he was cracking. "I feed you, I pay for that school, and this is what I get." Her voice got louder. Her steps sharper. She stormed over and grabbed him by the arm, dragging him toward the bedroom. "Please. I'm sorry, Mom. Please don't," he begged. But it didn't stop her. The extension cord came out again, crack. Then again. And again. Each lash cutting into more than just skin, it tore at the last threads of whatever strength he had left. Then something shifted. In a moment of panic, or instinct, Alexander broke free and rushed to the kitchen. He yanked open the drawer. His hands were shaking violently. Inside was a small paring knife. Not a weapon. Just a tool used to peel fruit. But in that moment, it might as well have been a lifeline. He grabbed it. Behind him, his mother's voice grew louder. Her footsteps approached. "What are you doing? Put that down. Don't be stupid, you little." She stepped closer. And in a single motion, fast, clumsy, almost blind, he stabbed her. One strike. Just one. The blade pierced her chest, cutting straight to the heart. It was not calculated. It was not clean. But it was fatal. Silence. She collapsed on the floor, eyes still open in shock. Blood spilled quickly, pooling across the cold tile floor. Alexander stood frozen. The knife clattered to the ground. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking, blood smeared across his fingers. "Mom. Mom, please," he whispered. Then louder. Then cried. He tried to wake her. Tried to press on the wound, as if he could undo it all. But no one responded. No one held him. Only silence. 15 minutes passed before a neighbor, hearing strange sobs, stepped outside and found Alexander on the porch, his face pale and soaked with tears. He was shaking, whispering to no one. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to stop." The police arrived not long after. What they found was not the image of a killer. They found a blood-stained boy, broken, terrified, and crumpled like a child who had done something he didn't even understand. He didn't resist arrest. He didn't deny it. And when they asked why, he gave them the only truth he could. "I just wanted her to stop." Part 3, Justice or Mercy. Immediately after the incident, 14-year-old Alexander Bedford was arrested and placed in a juvenile detention center. At the police station, he didn't say much. When asked what had happened, he bowed his head and whispered, "I don't know. I just wanted her to stop. That simple sentence became the core of his legal defense in the long months to follow. Prosecutors initially charged Alexander with first-degree murder, a charge that implied planning and intent. If convicted, Alexander could have faced life in prison, despite being just a child. Their key piece of evidence: a crumpled sheet of paper found in Alexander's school bag. Scrawled across it in messy handwriting were the words, "How do you kill someone and not get caught?" To prosecutors, this was a clear sign of intent, a prelude to murder. They argued that Alexander didn't act in a moment of fear or panic. He had thought about it. He had written about it. Then he carried it out. One prosecutor even stated in court, "This child is dangerous. He didn't act in a moment of rage, he planned to kill." In contrast, Alexander's defense team painted a very different picture. They presented medical records, psychological evaluations, and witness testimony that revealed a long history of physical and emotional abuse. Clinical psychologists determined that Alexander suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and acute anxiety, caused by years of living in an abusive and fear-driven household. His attorney argued, Alexander didn't kill out of hatred. He did it out of desperation, fear, and survival. And the most tragic part is, no one ever stepped in to help. They contended that the note found in his backpack wasn't a blueprint for murder, it was a cry for help. A piece of silent desperation scribbled during a moment of mental collapse. With no friends, no trusted adults, no therapist to talk to, Alexander had only that paper and a pen to express his pain. A court-appointed psychologist concluded in her report, "This boy does not show the traits of a violent or antisocial youth. There is no history of fighting, aggression, or rebellious behavior. What he does show is a pattern of prolonged trauma and a total lack of emotional support." After months of legal arguments and psychological evaluations, Alexander agreed to a plea deal. He pled guilty to second-degree murder, a lesser charge that reduced the sentence but still recognized the severity of the act. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, followed by 10 years of supervised release and mandatory psychological therapy. When delivering the sentence, the judge gave a statement that echoed throughout the courtroom. "If we look only at your actions, you deserve punishment. But if we look at your circumstances, then we, the adults in your life, also failed you." Alexander said nothing. He bowed his head and accepted the sentence, not as a punishment, but perhaps as a release. Not from guilt, but from years of silence no one had ever broken. Alexander's case raised a deeper question. Can a child who has been shaped by violence, neglected by the system, and driven by trauma be held fully accountable for a single, desperate act? At the edge of law and mercy, of justice and empathy, the truth is rarely simple. Sometimes, the law gives us a verdict. But only the heart can tell us if it was right. Part 4, Consequences and Redemption. Alexander entered the juvenile detention center at just 14 years old, an age when he should have been worried about school, video games, and dreams of the future. But for him, those dreams ended the night he picked up that knife. And all that was left was silence. In the facility, Alexander was the quietest kid in his block. He didn't talk, didn't fight, didn't cause trouble. Guards described him as a shadow, always sitting in the corner, staring at the floor. One time, a fellow inmate asked, "Did you really kill someone?" "Yeah. My mom." The reply was flat, cold, and it shut down the conversation. But healing would begin from the most unexpected place. A woman named Grace, a prison counselor assigned to monitor his mental health. At first, Alexander refused to talk to her. Refused to say anything at all. But Grace didn't walk away. "You don't have to say anything. I'll just be here when you're ready." 1 month passed. Then 2. And finally, one day, Alexander asked softly, "If a mother wants her kid to disappear, does that make the kid ungrateful?" That question opened the door. Over the next few years, Alexander slowly began opening up to Grace. He told her about the nights he was locked outside, the screaming, the random beatings over a wrong math answer. He didn't cry much, he just froze. But he began to write. Journals. Letters. Poems. Each word was a piece of his broken self being stitched back together. One sentence he once wrote left Grace in stunned silence. "She never hugged me. But I still remember the smell of her hair when she walked by." Alexander enrolled in the facility's education program. He started over, from basic grammar to math, even psychology. Writing became his strongest skill. One day, in an internal essay competition, he won first place with a piece titled, "If I Could Talk to My 10-Year-Old Self." The essay ended with a single, haunting line. "I'd hug him and say, 'You're not invisible.'" Alexander's story slowly began spreading among youth counselors and rehabilitation workers. He became a living example of something rare. A child who had killed, yet somehow found a way to heal. Alexander was released at age 24, after serving the full 10-year sentence. As he walked out of the gates, the first person waiting for him wasn't family, it was Grace. She hugged him and said, "I'm proud of you." And for the first time, in front of an adult, Alexander let himself cry. Life on the outside wasn't easy. His name was still associated with the death of his mother. He felt the stares, the whispers. But this time, he wasn't alone. He had learned to speak, to ask for help, and most importantly, to forgive himself. Final part, hero or monster. Alexander Bedford's story isn't just about a murder. It's a wake-up call, a haunting reminder of the forgotten children growing up in silence. Of young souls battered by violence, ignored by the adults around them, and eventually, pushed to a breaking point. Yes, Alexander killed his mother. That fact can never be changed. But if you had witnessed that child grow up, afraid, beaten, quietly begging for help that never came, would you see him as a criminal, or as someone who should have been rescued? Can a wounded child truly become a monster on their own? Or are we, the adults who failed them, the true architects of tragedy? Maybe justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes, justice is the courage to face an uncomfortable truth. If someone had reached out to Alexander earlier, a life might have been saved. If you are a parent, a teacher, a sibling, a neighbor, don't ignore the silent signs. A kind word, a gentle hug, a moment of attention might be the very thing that saves a young life from the edge. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story made you reflect, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more real stories, stranger, and more tragic than fiction. See you in the next video.